The world is so competitive now. So you have to build out a PR strategy when you're launching any kind of business, because you need to have a brand awareness, right? If you have a clothing company, if or opening a clothing store, if you're very excited about what you're doing, so you're pumped and you think everybody else is just as excited as you are. However, when the doors open and nobody's there, it's because they didn't know just as much as you did to be just as excited. So you have to share that in order to get people up to your excitement level, right? Can we do it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Influential Women. I'm Jody O'Brien. Today, we're talking about something that keeps many female entrepreneurs up at night: visibility. How do you build a brand without a massive budget? How do you get noticed when there's so much noise? And how do you tell your story in a way that actually lands? Our guest today is Jenna Guarneri. She's founder and CEO of JMG Public Relations, author of the bestseller You Need PR, and one of America's leading voices on public relations for startups. She's also host of the rapidly growing podcast Call Your Publicist. But here's what we love about Jenna. She doesn't gatekeep PR strategy, she democratizes it. She shows women entrepreneurs and innovators how to build visibility strategically, whether they have a full PR budget or they're doing it themselves. And she's proven it works by being her very own best case study. Jenna has been featured on Good Morning America 4 times. She sparked viral conversations about everything from attention economy trends to celebrity branding. And she runs social followings to prove she practices what she preaches. But beyond all of those accolades, Jenna understands something crucial. Visibility isn't a luxury for women building something, it's infrastructure. And success isn't just about the big wins, it's about celebrating every victory all along the way. Jenna, welcome to Influential Women.
Thank you, Jody. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Well, you wrote You Need PR and intentionally shaped it to serve founders and innovators who don't have these big budgets. So was that a really specific choice for you?
It was. I did it on purpose. So I wrote the book. It was during COVID, so quarantine. That was my project. And what inspired me was the idea that as an entrepreneur myself, I'm in many entrepreneurial groups, and there's always these books that everyone talks about that for marketing, for accounting, right? There's always a book for something that's like the go-to. Nobody had a book for PR. So I wanted to make something that was accessible, because you get so many discrepancies about what PR is. Is it marketing? Is there, like, what is it? So I wanted to make that book to be the book that's on the desk of entrepreneurs or just anyone who wants to learn about PR, and it could be their go-to guide. And it's really meant to be foundational, so that way you could teach people like, hey, this is what to expect about PR.
And so in your own journey, what made you decide, I'm going to make this book accessible to people who really can't afford the traditional agency model? Because you could make it just for people, who have already succeeded.
Yeah, well, I think for the reason being for that is that it's, you always as an entrepreneur want to give back to the community. So for me, that was my way of doing so, of trying to mentor people that I couldn't actually mentor for whatever reason, right? It's being able to open up your expertise to other people and to help them in their journeys along the way, right? I don't have to physically talk to every single person for them to be able to get a tidbit out of me and to be able to get something that could help them in their journey. So why not create something that can really go towards the masses and be accessible? Because PR can be expensive. So why not create something that could be an entry point for people?
So why do you think women specifically struggle with this visibility issue and self-promotion?
Well, if you think about it, women are always taught to be, quiet, reserved, act a certain way, or they used to, rather. I should say they used to be taught to be that, right? So as women, we naturally hold back, we pause more often. And so it just becomes this moment where women, when you ask them to be in the spotlight or you suggest PR, that perhaps they're a little bit more hesitant because that's not their natural habitat. And that's understandable. So it's really about pulling women out of that and getting them comfortable in expressing themselves more in an extroverted way, and understanding that it's not about being, you don't always have to be humble and be not overshare all your accolades. It's okay. Stand up, share them to everybody, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. You earn that right. And it's important for women to be comfortable in that.
What are you seeing in your work with female founders and entrepreneurs that have led you to believe this?
I've worked with so many female founders at this point, and usually when they're starting to work with me, they've already gotten past that point, right? They're at the point where I don't care, and they already have their voice. But I am well aware that that's not the norm for everyone, right? So there is a different layer before that that helps get people towards that. And it could be for a number of reasons, right? They might not be there in the journey of their entrepreneurism, or perhaps they just weren't that type of culture wasn't ingrained in them when they were younger. Some females had that growing up, and so they had that experience to be very expressive in who they are and to share more about their journey. So it really depends. Every single person is different, but from my experience, when I'm working with people, they've already somehow gotten past that, but I'm well aware there's a different level of.
So, when you say you need PR, what do you actually mean? Because I think many women hear PR and they think, oh, that's for celebrities, that's for companies with $1 million budgets. But what is the real story? Why do we need PR?
So the reason I chose the title You Need PR for the book is it was simple. When I would tell people what I did for work, their first reaction would be, I need PR. I'm like, you do. And it's simply because the world is so competitive now. So you have to build out a PR strategy when you're launching any kind of business because you need to have a brand awareness, right? So for instance, if you have a clothing company, if or opening a clothing store, you're very excited about what you're doing. So you're pumped and you think everybody else is just as excited as you are. However, when the doors open and nobody's there, it's because they didn't know just as much as you did to be just as excited. So you have to share that in order to get people up to your excitement level, right? So it's really about getting the brand awareness out there that will help you succeed and scale the company. So that way you're getting more sales, more customers, right? It helps with the back end of business and increasing the ROI for you.
So, when we talk about innovators and founders, what happens with a woman's business, her opportunities, her income when she stays visible?
When she stays visible, it's endless, really, because you're extending your audience, right? Think about just on LinkedIn alone, right? If you become active on LinkedIn, you can grow your connections to 10,000 plus. There's 10,000 people that hear your voice. There's 10,000 people that could be potential customers. And that's just that. That's not counting Instagram. That's not counting a newsletter database that you've created from your network, right? Every audience combined, you can have hundreds of thousands of connections, right? So it's important to realize that it's endless, the possibilities. You just got to keep growing, keep having conversations. And then the end, that will help you in the business in the long term of things and what your goals are. Everyone's goals are different. So for each woman that's planning a strategy, think about why are you doing this? What's the goal of creating this audience, right? Maybe it's not sales. Maybe it's building a platform for yourself as a thought leader. Whatever it is, it's important to leverage that and figure out how can you use this ability to have this large network to your benefit as a business owner.
Such good advice, Jenna. Well, you've done something really different this past year. You and JMGPR have excelled at doing your own PR. How did you come to decide to do that?
So we've actually been doing it for a very long time, our own PR, since we launched the company 11 years ago. That was one of the strategies I built in at the very beginning on purpose because I understood it could be a key differentiator and there wasn't a person that was owning that space because PR is always meant to be behind the scenes. So even though I'm an introvert at heart, if you can imagine that, it's actually something that I had to get comfortable doing, but I understood what it could do for the business. This past year in particular, though, we took it to the next level by launching the podcast, which is very much outside my comfort zone because talking that much is just, it's hard. But when I have a co-host, Alexandra, and a great producer like Arceli, it makes it a lot easier. So by doing that, we elevated our network of listeners because we have a strong Instagram, we have a strong LinkedIn. Well, a podcast, that's different, right? So we start to look at these other avenues that how do we keep growing our audience?
I love that. And I'm sure you're having such a good time. even though maybe you feel a little bit like you want to be introverted, you want to go home and read a book or something, but you put yourself out there.
It is a lot of fun, right? When you get to work with people and chat with really amazing people like yourself, right? Like, that's awesome. I get to, you and I in different parts of the US get to connect and talk about things we're passionate about. And so being able to have a podcast allows us to do that just like it does for you. And it's a way to connect.
And really, it's the best job that there is. I'm so glad that you're giving it the opportunity and you're getting that opportunity. So, what have you learned about visibility, building that visibility for yourself? And how do you teach your clients differently after learning those kinds of tools yourself?
Well, that's a great question. So, what's different about every single client that we have is usually just their story and what they're trying to sell for their story, right? But in terms of what I would teach them differently from what I'm doing for my work, it's no different, right? The type of energy you put towards PR, towards your content development, it's the same. And the same if anyone wants to grow their platforms, I suggest they do it similar to what I've done. So for anyone watching, you're curious, tune in and you can literally see the template and you can do your version of that very easily.
You talk a lot about building your narrative. What does that actually mean? Why is telling a story different from just talking about what you do?
Oh, I love this question. So it's so important to be a storyteller because there's so much noise out there with all these platforms. It's the ability to connect. There's that many people doing it as well. So your story is what makes people listen because it's unique. It's something they haven't heard before. Every person is different. Every person has their own journey, how they get to where they are, their pain points, their passions. So creating that package of your story is what makes you who you are and why it's important for people to tune in. So, and that doesn't mean you have to share absolutely everything there is about you by any means, the things you're comfortable with. And so when you're doing that, that is the thing that helps also develop more of that expertise as a thought leader, right? That's a great platform for that because the things you can talk about the industry, the things you're in, right? Those are the things that you can start to talk more about on all these platforms. And now people know they can come to you for. Everybody knows you can come to me for PR, right? So you can do that with every type of specialty that you have or even interest.
Such good advice today. I really appreciate it. And I'm taking all the notes over here, all the notes.
I know you do good interviews. I was like, I have to come prepared for Jody.
Thank you. Well, listen, you leverage pop culture and social trends like nobody we've seen, and you do it in a really strategic way. You've sparked conversations about Alex Earl and about Kim Kardashian and about the attention economy. So, how do you decide what's worth talking about? And then how do you build your narrative in a way that feels really authentic rather than opportunistic?
Such a good question. Well, I think first is the opportunistic portion of what you just asked, right? Because you never want to feel like you're taking advantage of a topic or something happening in the news, right? If it's a bad situation in the news, you don't want it to come across like you're trying to sell your services. And that can be a really fine line. So it's important that when people are doing that and they're touching on these things, that it's not a sensitive topic. And if it is, you have to do it in with a delicate balance, right? For the instances of Alex Earl and Kim Kardashian, they're lighter topics, luckily so, right? But I always look at things as, does this make sense for my brand to talk about? And I remember one time, and I wish I remember what it was we were looking at and analyzing if we should talk about. And someone said, but Jenna, you actually don't like that musician. Like, you don't listen to her music. So, like, don't worry about jumping in. I was like, you know what? That's a good point. Well, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't compare to that. It doesn't make sense for my brand. If you know me, I don't listen to that music, right? So why would I jump in on that conversation? So it's important to know if you're going to jump in on something, it has to be somewhat relatable to what you're talking about and who you are, and not just jumping on a trend just to get the pop culture and the clicks right for it. So it's important to be able to figure out who you are first as a brand, what your mission is, what you stand for. And then when you're discussing, do I want to partake in this conversation? It becomes very clear, yes or no, or does this make sense for the brand? But if you don't have that foundation built, you could then all of a sudden have videos about all 100 different topics and it just seems too scattered, right? You got to make it feel more pulled together, dialed back, but in a very polished, I say polished, you don't want to be overly produced, but in a polished way that it makes sense and it's seamless.
My goodness, I love it. So let's talk about the real constraint for people, and especially those women who are starting out. It's money, right? Money is a huge constraint. A woman listening to this podcast today, she may have zero PR in her budget. She may have been putting all of that at the very bottom of her list. She's bootstrapping, she's running her business part time. What's the first move? Like, where does she start? How does she stay motivated when everything feels so slow and that she's not really getting that attention?
Well, first off, kudos to that person because we've all been that person and it's a lot of work. And you're trying to figure out, wear many hats and trying to figure out all these different parts of the business that you weren't familiar with before. It's just a lot of work and it's very overwhelming. But it's important to know that there's a way you can do a little bit of PR for yourself to gain more exposure, right? You can start so much as pick a market you're in, right? Regional press loves focusing on their locals. Start there. Figure out what your story is, what's the unique component of it, and then talk to the media about it, right? Outreach your local television station, your local newspaper. Use your what you have at your resource, which is the local market. From there, you'll start to become more familiar with what PR is, how do you work with the media. It's a great entry point to something much larger. So why not test out your own market for it?
That's awesome. We're Twinkies. That is such good advice. I tell people every day, they're like, I want to be on Drew Barrymore. I want to pitch CNN. I really want to do this. I want to do that. And I say, call your local producer, right? You have to talk to your local producers. They'll give you that reel. Call the local anchor, email the reporter, connect and build. It takes time, but that's how you build that great reel. And the local market is a great place to practice that.
That. And you know, it's so funny. I even get that too, where people are like, my goal, Drew Barrymore. It's like, that's
Yes.
a great goal. What have you done before that warrants that jump? Because that is quite a jump, right? You got to start a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have a reel, right? That you can show them. Like, look, I know what I'm doing.
Exactly. Plus, then you also are more comfortable. So that way, by the time you get to Drew, your messaging and your comfort level on camera is on point. So that way, when you do get that big moment, you nail it, right?
And hack too. Like, don't you always tell them, Drew loves a good story. If she's going to sit Indian style on our couch with you, you better come with your story. And it better be a good one, like the one that you just told me.
Yes, because you know those interviews are not surface level. She's going
No.
deep. So you got to sit on
Yeah.
the couch, be prepared with what those message points are.
Yes. Amen, sister. Well, your podcast to call your publicist has grown incredibly fast 387,000 streams in your first year. And it has been recognized as that 2025 most shared show on Spotify. So, congratulations on that. So, you're expanding now through television on Roku. What is this about? You could reach 90 million households.
Yeah, so the podcast is on Roku. So you could search it and it has its own platform there and you can now watch it on television aside from just your streaming devices. So it's a fantastic opportunity that we were presented. We're like, oh my God, this is awesome. We didn't expect something like this. But that's the power of starting to share. You don't know where it'll go. And those opportunities present themselves in ways you couldn't expect. So never would have thought by saying yes to everyone's idea about a podcast that it could evolve in that way. But if you don't say yes, you don't know what's going to come.
Okay. So, tell us the story of that. Like, what has that done for you? How has it changed you and your business since putting yourself out there?
Yeah. So, in terms of the podcast or in terms of overall content,
Yeah.
the
In
podcast.
terms of the podcast.
Yeah. So now it's more so just more recognition in terms of credibility. It's launched more of that. We're being asked for people to be on our show, which is fantastic, right? And eventually that could lead to potential business. Who knows, right? It's more about just getting our thought leadership out there and really sharing more about our expertise to business owners, to other thought leaders, right? Then sharing our voice to more of we have a huge college following on Instagram. This then leads to a platform for them to gain more access into the PR world to bridge the gap before graduation, before getting into the real world. So it just really helps in so many different ways. And so we're getting feedback from a number of different categories of people that are enjoying it and for the reasons that we did expect, right? We knew the college student, we knew the business owner was going to be watching this. And so for us, it just feels gratifying that what we intended to do in terms of who we were reaching and talking to is exactly what's happening.
I love that for you because there's always that moment when people start reaching out and they're like, I would love to be a guest. I would love to be a guest. And you're like, people are listening. That's wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're marking 11 years as CEO of JMG PR. You're serving on the Blue Star Families Advisory Board. Thank you for doing that. By the way, as a daughter of a veteran, I really appreciate that. But you're building like this community alongside your business. So, how does that define your success now?
Of course. What an amazing community there is. It is so
Oh,
amazing to have people that and organizations that look out for our families of our military and
yeah.
to be able to give back to that community who have do so much for us. I mean, it's an honor. Success is a funny question. I feel like as an entrepreneur, you never feel like you're successful enough. It's always like, what can I do further? What's next? But it's important, and I do have to remind myself of this to pause and realize how much has been produced in such a short window for me at my age, right? I have to be think of those things and cognizant of it. And so for me, success, I don't know. For me, it's more so, you know what I think? I'm going to pull this out here. I think it's related to happiness, personal happiness, right? So for me, I love the success that I've created has now created, it bleeds into my everyday life, right? It gives me the opportunity then to travel with my loved ones, right? To travel and to take that time that I enjoy and to be able to enjoy those moments so I can step away, right? I come right back, I'm working at the same time, but it does create opportunities that help me feel fulfilled and help bring that to my loved ones as well.
Well, congratulations on that. So, what would you say to a woman who's been grinding for just years and wondering if that work will actually ever pay off?
Keep grinding because there's always an ROI. Everyone's journey is different on when that happens. You're never going to know when that exact moment will be. Just have faith that it will. For instance, for content for us, we've been producing it for both me and the company, two different platforms for 11 years. So only this past year did we create content that went viral and Kim Kardashian liked it, Lindsay Lohan reshared it, right? Couldn't have expected that to happen by any means, nor did I ever think I was going to be on Good Morning America. But all of it it's coming together, right? It's somehow produced its way and it comes up in ways you least expect it. And you get those phone calls at the weirdest times, right? So just know that just by going on the journey, presenting yourself and being open to it, things come to you. Different timelines for different people, but it comes to you.
Thank you so much for reminding us that visibility isn't a luxury. It's actually something we deserve and something that we can build ourselves. Thank you for showing us that success. It comes in all shapes, all sizes. So, whether you're celebrating your 10th year as a CEO, or if you're getting that first media placement, or maybe you're just finishing a tough week, I have had a tough week, let me tell you. Well, the win is what matters. Your story, your work, your voice, they all matter. So if you're watching or listening today, keep that in mind. The world needs to know about you. You've got a story. And Jenna, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate hearing yours.
Thank you for having me. This has been an awesome conversation and I appreciate being here.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the women who are building something. They need permission now to make it visible. Until next time, I'm Jody O'Brien, and this was Influential Women. Keep showing up, keep leading, and keep celebrating the wins, big and small, that you deserve.
Can we do it?